When I first moved to Green Hollow Estates, I wasn't looking for drama, just silence. After 10 years of city noise and endless deadlines, I wanted a place where the only thing I'd hear at night was the wind through the trees. The neighborhood looked perfect, wide lawns, quiet streets, and behind my house, a stretch of untouched forest that seemed to breathe peace itself. My name's Mason Cole, 38, software engineer, professional introvert. I'd traded city chaos for small-town calm. At least, that's what I thought. The HOA brochure promised harmony and order. What it didn't mention was that harmony came with surveillance, the kind that peers over fences and counts the number of inches your grass grows. The president, Evelyn Ward, ran things like a commander in pearls. Everyone smiled at her, but behind those smiles, I could sense fear. If I'd known what was coming, I'd have moved anywhere else. It started with a Saturday morning walk. I followed the tree line behind my house and stepped into a different world, a quiet forest filled with the sound of birds, streams, and stillness. The air smelled like pine and wet earth. After a week of exploring, I got curious. Who owned this land? A trip to the county clerk's office told me an 83-year-old man named Frank Walters, living in Florida. The property had been in his family for decades but hadn't been used in years. I sent him an email introducing myself, explained that I was a respectful hunter who'd love to use the land for deer season. He replied the very next day, "Son, you have my full permission. Just respect the land and send me a photo if you get a good one." It felt like a small blessing. I wasn't breaking rules. I was honoring tradition. I set up my trail cam, cleaned my rifle, and waited for the right morning. What I didn't know, that peaceful stretch of woods wasn't just admired by me. The HOA had claimed it long ago, and soon my quiet little hunting trip would turn into a neighborhood war. The morning was cold, fog curling low around the trees. I lined up my shots, steady hands, slow breath. One clean shot, and the deer dropped instantly. But the peace shattered with the sound of shouting. Through the trees came a group of women in matching jogger outfits, led by none other than Evelyn Ward herself. "What on earth do you think you're doing?" she shrieked, already pulling out her phone. "This is community land. You can't just murder wildlife here." I lowered my rifle and kept my voice calm. "This is an HOA property, Evelyn. I have written permission from the owner." She scoffed. "Owner? This forest has been part of Green Hollow for years. You'll be hearing from us." Her entourage gasped and whispered like I just committed a crime scene. Evelyn snapped photos, demanded my name, and stormed off with the air of a queen filing charges. That's when I realized something. She didn't care whether it was legal. She cared that she couldn't control it. And that made me dangerous in her eyes. 3 days later, an envelope was taped to my front door. Violation notice, cruel hunting practices, $5,000 fine. I laughed out loud. Then I read further. Failure to pay within 30 days may result in legal action and property lien. I called my neighbor, Sarah, the only friendly face around. She sighed. "Evelyn's been using those woods for years. Calls them our community trails. But they're not. They belong to that old man in Florida." So that was it. They'd been trespassing all this time. And now, because I actually had permission, they were punishing me. It wasn't about wildlife. It was about power. I decided then I wouldn't just fight back. I'd end this game for good. The next HOA meeting was standing room only. Evelyn sat at the front like a judge ready for sentencing. "Mason Cole," she announced, "has violated our community's values. He endangered residents and disrespected our shared space." I waited for the murmurs to quiet, then stood. "Actually," I said, laying printed documents on the table, "this land isn't yours. Here's the owner's written permission, the tax record, and the hunting license. You don't own a single inch of it." Silence. Even Evelyn's smile cracked. Richard, the treasurer, frowned. "He's right, Evelyn. This land doesn't show up under HOA property." But she waved him off. "We've maintained those trails for a decade. That gives us rights." "Rights," I said, "don't appear by walking on someone else's property." The crowd stirred. Evelyn slammed her folder shut. "Fine still stands." That's when I knew logic wouldn't beat her. Law would. That night I couldn't sleep. So I dug deeper. County records showed something shocking. The HOA had submitted permit applications for a new community park called the Evelyn Ward Nature Reserve. The proposed location, Frank Walter's land, the same place I'd hunted. They'd raised over $70,000 from residents to improve the trails, but they never owned them. I called Frank. "They're using your land without permission," I told him. He sighed, weary. "I'm too old to fight them, son. If you want, I'll sell it to you." I've been meaning to let it go anyway. And just like that, the perfect revenge took shape. Over the next week, I worked with a real estate attorney. I liquidated savings, tapped into inheritance, and closed the deal. 80 acres of woodland, all mine. When the paperwork cleared, I felt something I hadn't in months, calm. Real calm. I imagined Evelyn's next hike, the shock on her face when she found the private property, no trespassing signs. But I didn't want chaos. I wanted precision. So I waited. Quietly. 2 days later, right on schedule, Evelyn and her vice president marched to my door with another official notice. I smiled. "Please come in. I have something for you, too." When she sat down, I placed the freshly signed deed on the table. "You're looking at the new owner of those trails you love so much," I said. Her jaw dropped. Marcus, her assistant, went pale. This was no longer a game. It was checkmate. Evelyn flipped through the papers, her voice trembling. "This can't be legal." "Oh, it's perfectly legal," I said. "In fact, here's a letter from my attorney, a cease and desist order. You have 7 days to remove all benches, signs, and feeders you illegally placed there." Her smile vanished. "You can't do that. The community doesn't own it," I cut in. "Never did." She stood up, eyes blazing. "You're making a big mistake." "Maybe," I said, "but it's my land now. And next time your group steps on it, I'll have them arrested for trespassing." She stormed out without another word, slamming the door so hard the frame shook. I just stood there, smiling. For once, silence returned, and this time it was mine. By the next morning, my phone was buzzing. Neighbors whispered, rumors spread. Some were angry, others curious. Sarah stopped by, laughing nervously. "You broke the internet," she said. "Everyone's talking about it." Evelyn's furious. News outlets picked up the story. Local HOA accused of using private land without permission. Evelyn called an emergency meeting, but the tide had turned. The same people who once nodded at her every command now questioned her every decision. She tried blaming me, calling me vindictive, but the truth was out. For the first time, the neighborhood stopped fearing her, and she hated it. Within a week, the HOA tried to take me to court and lost instantly. The judge's words were simple: "You can't fine someone for actions on land you don't own." I put up a fence, installed cameras, and posted new signs: "Private property. Trespassers will be prosecuted." When Evelyn tried to stage a community hike, the sheriff personally escorted her off my land. Her face that day, worth every penny. She fined me for hunting and ended up banned from hiking. Months later, peace returned to Green Hollow. Evelyn resigned, humiliated. Sarah became the new HOA president and rewrote the rules: transparency, fairness, and no more power games. I reopened part of my land as a wildlife reserve in honor of Frank Walters, the man who trusted me to respect it. The same neighbors who once glared at me now waved when I passed. Sometimes justice doesn't need a courtroom. Sometimes it just needs patience and a signature on the right piece of paper. They fined me for hunting. But in the end, I hunted down their arrogance and won.